Welcome to the Accidental Experts podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Hamilton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a child and family therapist. I have been in practice for over 15 years, and I'm also a mom of 4. So I know the challenges both professionally and personally. I'm so glad that you're here today to grow your parenting toolbox. Please come as you are and be ready to learn. My goal is to make you the accidental expert so that you can raise healthy humans. Okay, everyone, I am so excited to welcome back Dr. Matt Zakreski today because he's going to talk to us about how we have this societal view, especially with teenage boys, that kindness is weakness, and he is here to disprove that. So with that, let's get to Dr. Matt.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this. Often kindness can be viewed as weakness, right, in our society, especially when it comes to males. And why do you think that message is out there? Why is our society viewing kindness as weakness?
I mean, I blame capitalism? That feels like feels like low-hanging fruit. I mean, listen, if you're in the rat race, it's a zero-sum game, right? You are moving towards winning. And the problem is that we get a lot of messages in our society that to be successful requires you to win.
Mhm.
And I don't think that's true. I think that being successful can be defined as any number of things, not the least of which is lifting everyone else up around you,
Mhm.
right? And that's, I mean, if you think about how I'm spending this hour, right? I could be seeing a therapy client and being paid X dollars for seeing that therapy client, or I could be seeing you and being on this podcast, which I don't get paid for,
Mhm.
but then we get the word out there and we help a lot of people. So am I winning right now? Well, it depends on how you define that, right?
Mhm.
So kindness is planting seeds for a garden we may never sit in, but whoever gets to sit in that garden absolutely wins because of that.
Mhm.
So it moves us away from an egocentric model to a what is our obligation to our fellow man?
Mhm.
And that's psychologically infinitely helpful.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's benefiting society to have that viewpoint of, you know, I don't know that we need to give all of our dollars away, right? But to benefit other people, which is not what we're saying, right? But it's also that, we can do other things, nice things for other people that may not benefit us directly, but ultimately are benefiting society, which to be honest is the whole reason why I started this podcast to begin with. And I don't know that I've advertised this, but I found myself in a place where selfishly, I actually wanted society to get better and to know what I knew, because that meant it was a better space for my kids and all the other kids to grow up in. That if all the parents knew all the things that I had access to, that it could maybe just improve this world a little. And so that is kindness, and
Yeah.
it's infinite form, right? Like that's what it is. So why do you believe that kindness is strength then? So I mean, if I could put those words into your mouth of like that is a strong thing to do. Why could kindness also be strength?
Can you imagine if I had come on your podcast to disagree with you about that? Like, you're wrong, Bryce.
It would have been a totally different conversation, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Welcome to Mansplaining with Dr. Matt. Yeah, could you imagine? I'm gonna throw up in my mouth. Um, so this is gonna sound pedantic as hell, right? So I I always say is we don't want our kids to be nice. Nice means I'm only caring about your needs, I'm not caring about mine,
Mhm.
right? We don't want our kids to be selfish. Selfish means I'm only caring about my needs, I'm not caring about yours. I think the word kind is a space where you're seeing both sides, right? The word I often use is pro-social. What is the best social behavior in this situation? So if you come up to me like, "Hey, give me your money. I want to buy a venti chai." And I'm like, well, "Okay, here's $20." Like, that's nice, but I just gave you $20.
Mhm.
Kind is, I've got $20. Why don't we both go get a coffee? I
Mhm.
can spend more time with you, Bryce. Or I'd be like, you know what? I'm happy to give you a coffee. I will need you to pay me back, though. When are you going to pay me back? Right? That's kind. It's pro-social. We're layering that in together.
Yeah.
More selfish, obvious is like, no, it's my money.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and I think I love that explanation because it reinforces, because I mean, nice, I mean, I like to be nice,
Yeah.
right? But it also sometimes I'm like, that's not in my best interest, right? Like the thing that I'm doing that would really hurt me. And so being kind is like balancing the two. And I love that definition of kindness. So what can we do as parents to promote this concept of teaching our kids to be kind or to value kindness?
I think that it really does start at home, right? And everybody's kindness is going to look different, right? I grew up in a very service-oriented house. We always donated stuff every year. Like we were all involved in scouts. We worked with our church. I mean, that was very service-oriented thing. Some families, their kindness is they write a check and they send it to the ASPCA or whatever it is. That's cool. That's kind. Name it. Name it as such, right? We are doing this thing because we want this impact to occur, right?
Mhm.
Uh, I'm a Unitarian Universalist, and when we think about how we contribute to our society, our community, we always say it's either time, talent, or treasure. So we model that at home by saying, like, you can do a kind thing with your time, talent, or treasure. I can spend time with dad. I can paint a picture for mom. I can give my little brother $5 so we can go to the ice cream truck, right? Those are all ways we contribute to a world of kindness. And when we talk about that stuff at home, it's easier to translate those skills to the community. Like, we're going to gather our books and give them to the local library. That's treasure. We're going to volunteer for Habitat for Humanity, and we're going to give up our time to help build a house, right? Those are the things we do that start as things we already have inside of us. We just amplify them and put them in a different arena, right? There's this idea out there that kindness has to be some extra thing. Like you build a third floor on your house, or you have to have like a special kindness suit. I think it's you come with what you've got and use that to the best of your ability. That's organic, it's easier, and it feels more human.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's modeling, right? It's like, and then naming it. I love making intention behind that of like we're naming what we're already doing, right? And why to help our kids decide what they think about that principle, right? They may think, I don't want to donate my stuff. And when I get older, I'm not going to, right? But as a family, we're like making decisions. My kids, we try to donate a lot of things. We have too much stuff, right? I feel like there's
Amen.
constantly too much stuff. And so, but we're talking about like, we're doing this to give it to other people. Like, here's the thing, or like, we have this, like, what organization should we give it to let the kids be a participant in that process too? So, how can we change this narrative as a society and that like this kindness is weakness or that we either have to do it, right? We have to be nice, right? In terms, or if we're not being nice, we're selfish. Like, how do we change this narrative in our society?
I think that it's about amplifying the right messages, but more importantly, it's about creating that groundswell, that critical mass, right? I I remember thinking very clear, like I remember in high school I joined Key Club,
Hmm.
right? Key Club volunteer organization, thinking like, I'm gonna do some service. And we spent all the time talking about the service we were gonna do, and we never actually did anything. And then I joined youth group in my church, and it was like, all right, this is your first meeting. That's awesome. By the way, we're walking across the street. We're gonna do soup kitchen stuff. I was like, I I'm not ready. They're like, you are now, and right. And it's funny because the old line. It's like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Hmm.
Like being around like-minded people amplifies the best parts of ourselves, right? I don't know if I ever would have gone to a soup kitchen by myself to serve some food, but going with 19 of my peers and an adult proctor was like, I can do that.
Yeah,
I
totally.
cut up some cornbread and I bust some tables and I walked out there feeling like $1 million, right?
Hmm.
So, and we live in this increasingly isolationist society. It is hard to step out of the echo chamber into community, especially in this post-COVID world, right? I mean, we all went into our silos and we had to. I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't have, But now it's like, okay, how do we re-engage?
Mhm.
Right? What does that look like? And a couple of kids I work with, they're in Washington State. They did this. You guys know exactly who you are. They were looking for a service project to build social emotional skills in the community. They were trying to figure out what to do. And I was like, guys, don't think about doing the quote unquote right thing. Think about what you want to do, what matters to you guys. And they were like, there's this park. There's this park. It's a mess. And I'm like, show me pictures because they're in Washington, I'm in New Jersey. And so they like ran down the street with their phones and they were just live streaming this. The park's a mess. I'm like, all right, there's your project. Fix it. They're like, well, but how? I'm like, I don't know. There's got to be a person in charge of it. There was. We got them on the phone. They explained to us what we needed to do. They filed the permit. And then they went and they spent a weekend cleaning up the park. And I say weekend intentionally because they were supposed to be there from 9 to noon on Saturday. They took one look at it. They realized it was a bigger job than they thought. The adults went out and they bought them all pizza. They were there till like 5, 6 o'clock. And like kids who had soccer or ballet were topping out, but then coming back, right?
Mhm.
I mean, chills as I tell this story, right? Like, and then they all came back on Sunday and they did it again, and the park was beautiful, right? And when the word got out there, they got that community support because good amplifies good.
Mhm.
So a local dumpster company donated a dumpster, right? The ice cream truck came by and was like, no, y'all's ice cream's on me today, right? These kids were getting positively reinforced from the community because once again, it's hard to do good by yourself. I'm sure everybody's walked by that park and been like, park's a mess. But when people started, then they had volunteers coming, adults from the community. The senior center down the road, I mean, it was like they was described to me as like the guys getting out of the floating boats in World War II at the landing in France, like at Normandy Beach. They're like all of a sudden, like all these elderly guys were getting out of the like, we're here to help.
Mhm.
It groundswelled
Mhm.
into something
Mhm.
amazing, right? So that's the power of kindness, right? Is that it promotes kindness from others.
Yeah, I love that. That is such a great story. I love stories, but also just like what a cool experience for those kids in that community to just pass the kindness along, right? Like we have this opportunity. So if you could speak to teens directly about this idea of kindness being strength, what would you want to say to them?
It's going to sound funny, but you're not alone. So I grew up as I was a teen boy in the late 90s, early aughts. And this was all you need to know about this era was Fred Durst was very popular, right? There was a lot of, that like cool, withdrawn, too cool to care archetype. And I hated that. I I wear my heart on my sleeve. I give a shit. Like just who I am. And I felt so out of touch with my generation because
Mhm.
they were all like had this affectation of like it's beneath me. And I'm like, nothing is beneath us. We like I was the kid who would be like, yo, you didn't recycle that. There's a recycling thing. Or I put the thing in the recycling. But what does it matter? I'm like, I don't know, but it does, right?
Mhm.
And I felt so alone until I found my people. And
Mhm.
when I found my people at like gifted camp in the summer or in musical theater or in the youth group for my church, all of a sudden I felt amplified, right? So if you are dismayed at the state of the world, you probably can't fix it alone, but you can find people who can,
Yeah.
right? And then you combine together, you're going to make deep relationships, you're going to do more good that reinforces you to do more, right? So, I mean, I remember thinking like at the beginning of high school that I'm not sure if I fit in the world. By the end of high school, I was like, my people give me a safe place in the world.
Mhm.
And that's a huge shift mentally, right? Because it's this place. It's like, as long as you know what home is, you can always go back. But a
Mhm.
lot of kids don't know what home is,
Yeah.
right? That's our job to help them find it.
Yeah. So, what do you think that you have learned about the value of kindness in your life?
Kindness is like throwing a boomerang. You never know when it's coming back to you, but you know it will. right? And I this is such a ridiculous story. Um, so several years ago, I had the opportunity to give a talk for a great organization here in New Jersey, that does therapeutic animal work, right? And they were like, "We cannot pay you very much." And I was like, "I get it, totally fine. Don't worry about it. Pay me what you can," right?
Mhm.
They were kind enough to invite me and my wife to their annual dinner. While we're there, I'm chatting to this guy and we're waiting in line for a beer. And I'm like, he's like, "Oh, what do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm a psychologist. I'm a speaker." He goes, "Wait, you're that Dr. Matt?" I'm like, he's like, "Listen, I work for this big fancy organization. We need a speaker, right?" So doing this kind thing for this organization turns out with me getting a $20,000 speaking gig, right? Now, I that is a very concrete, tangible way that the kindness repaid me, right? But it's an
Mhm.
example of I didn't do the initial thing hoping at some point it would turn around with this very lucrative thing for me.
Mhm.
But I never would have gotten the lucrative thing if I hadn't done the kind thing in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, one of my best friends in the entire world, um, the night that we both met the woman he married, he was like, "Dude, I'm telling you, she's into you." I'm like, "She really isn't, dude. Like, I am humble enough to know where I stand here." And so he's like, "Oh, you got to give me her number." Yeah, I'm sorry, "You've got to give her your number." I'm like, of course, totally." I'm like, "Here's his number. You call him, thumbs up." Now they're married with two beautiful children, right? And
I
Nelson,
love
you're
it.
right. I was right, buddy. Right. I mean, like, yes, the kind thing was not to argue with my friend, but was also to do the thing that was right.
Yeah.
Selfishly, I could have taken her number and she wouldn't have called me, and then they may never have dated,
Sure.
right? So it's the sort of thing that, those moments matter, right? And at their wedding, I was like, "That's right. It's all because of me." you know, but like,
Yes.
isn't that winging back to what we said earlier about like how rat race society zero sum game? Like, there's an attractive person. I want to date that person, but that's not the best outcome. The best outcome is this person I love dates this person, right? Did
Yeah.
I think they were going to get married? No, right? Not at that
Sure.
moment,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
6 months in, I was like, "Oh yeah, I bet on the
Yeah.
right horse here," right? So,
Yes, I love that. And finally, what do you want parents to take away from this?
it's if we think about kindness as strength, right? It takes a lot of strength to be kind. It takes strength to be open. It takes strength to be vulnerable, right? And if you're worried that your kid is too kind, don't harden their heart. Buy them a suit of armor,
Mhm.
right? Give them the tools and the people and the structure to support them in a world that will try to chew kindness up and spit it out, right? I give this talk on hope, and I would say there's this idea, right, where like hope is this dainty fairy. It's like, oh, la 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 la, la. I'm like, no, hope is a scrapper. Hope is like Rocky, like, "I didn't hear no bell," right? Like, I mean, that's nice is the fairy. Kind is Rocky, right?
Mhm.
Because I'm doing something bigger than myself, right? And as parents, the way we buy our kids that suit of armor is we amplify the things they're doing and we help them seek community. Um, and that to me is just this thing that any parent can do, right? Like, we have to parent the kids we have, not the kids we thought we were going to have.
Mhm.
I mean, your kid might zig and zag 1,000 times just when they're 12, and God knows what's going to happen in high school, but you'll get there. And but every time you can amplify what your kid's doing, it's showing them that the world is receptive to kindness. Kindness is important, and that kindness is a bridge to getting them the things they want, right? The friends, the dates, the colleges, the jobs, whatever it is, right? My wife volunteered in college for a organization that found secondhand furniture and donated it to recently homed people, right? People who had just gone from homeless to having a house. That was the organization. She did that, I think, for 12 months, 13 months. And then after she graduated college and she wanted to work in the mental health field, she didn't have any experience there. But the guy who hired her was like, hold on a second, you worked for that organization? A wider circle. That's what it was, a wider circle. And he's like, okay, that means you've got empathy. That means you're a kind person. That means you can work hard. I'm going to give you a chance. And she did that job for 18 months. And that's what got her into grad school. And that's where she met me. So it's a happy story till the end there.
Yeah.
All right. But it's really like, those are the things that you tell those stories, you amplify those stories, because it is so easy to turn on the news and see like, this multi-billionaire bought this thing and ruined it. Or, this person took all of the toilet paper in the store and nobody else has any toilet paper. I mean, bad news leads, but there's good stuff out there, right? And we say like, we cannot control what other people do.
Yeah.
But we can control what we do. And that's powerful.
Yeah. I think you're amplifying this idea that mindset matters, right? Like what we're focusing on, where we're putting our mind to, and what we're doing with our thoughts and energy, that all matters.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And like that energy is such a, it's like, I'm a neuroscientist, right? Like I like the brain, I like concrete things, but you and I both know that mental health is an art and a science. Right? Things like energy matter. It amplifies you. It turns you on in a really good way. And like, whatever those things are. And that's where parents, you can sit down and talk to your kids. Like, listen, don't worry about it sounding or looking a certain way. What's the thing you want to do? What's the thing when you do it, it makes your heart happy, right? Your kid might say, I want to rescue abandoned chinchillas. Well, we're going to find you a chinchilla place. That's what we're going to do, right? It may surprise you, right? But your kids are much deeper and more thoughtful and more emotionally savvy than we tend to give them credit for, especially because as parents, we tend to see the other side of that, the snarky, withdrawn, door slammed, right? Screechiness. Yeah. It's in there though. And the more we amplify it, the more we're going to see it, not just in the community, but at home. So it's really an investment in ourselves.
Yeah. Well, it's a great way to end this amazing interview. Thank you so much, Dr. Matt, for coming back again today to talk to us.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'll just keep coming back as long as you'll have me, right? I mean, you're going to be sick of me.
Well, that's a perfect problem to have. I will accept it.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thanks again, Dr. Matt, for all of that great information. I am leaving this conversation with this very good feeling about how kindness is strength. I love this concept. And I think that we can teach our kids how to view kindness as strength, and we can fight against the societal pressure that kindness is weakness in our own homes. And I think with that, it brings a peace to us to be kind and to treat people with kindness and spread kindness. I don't know about you, but when I am kind to other people, I often find myself experiencing a lot more joy. So with that, I will say thank you so much for your time today. Please rate and subscribe to our show. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, and keep the emails coming with topic requests to accidentalexperts@gmail.com. Have a fantastic day. Some words from our legal team.
The information presented in this podcast is not intended or implied to be a substitute for appropriate professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained on or available through this podcast, is for general information purposes only. This podcast makes no representations and assumes no responsibility for the accuracy or information on or available through this podcast, and such information is subject to change without notice. You are encouraged to confirm any information obtained through this program with other sources and review all information regarding any condition or treatment with the appropriate professionals.
What we're saying is, yes, I am a real therapist, but I'm not your therapist.